Hey everyone! So, this week I wanted to start off immediately by saying thank you so much for 100 subscribers! We finally hit it! It means so much to see that so many of you have subscribed to the channel and enjoyed seeing my content. It means a lot. I will be doing a special video for all 100 of you very soon, but this week I wanted to show the process for coloring the third issue of the Heyday Kids. Not the issue itself, just the cover. So in the third issue, there's a bit going on, and that made it really hard to color the cover, just because usually when you're coloring something, you want to have a focal point. And because there are 4 key characters here and the 2 cars, there just really wasn't a good way to choose a focal point. And sure, I could have tried to make the cars go into the background or something, but come on man, I spent so long on those. I'm not gonna just color hold them out of existence or something. I mean, they'd still be visible, but I want them to be seen. Anyways, I'm not super happy with how the colors on this one came out, just because they felt a little bit muddy, and no matter what I tried, it didn't really fix it, but I think that it's passable, and before it goes to print, I can always change the colors. This is just something that I needed to have at least one version done of before publishing it online, and since this week the third issue of the Heyday Kids is now posting for free on Tapaz Webtoons and Godson Comics, links will be in the description, I just really needed to have some sort of cover done. And unfortunately, the updates won't be huge, but it's really busy for me right now because I'm still working on Aces, and working on 2 comics at the same time is pretty full-time. And aside from that, I made the ridiculous decision to take on more work over this month. What more work could that be, Lissy? So, as you may know, November is National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo. And so, I have this book that I've been working on for a few months, but I've only ever gotten about 4,000, 5,000 words of it done, and that's nowhere what it needs to be. But I decided that through the month of November, I will be taking on almost like a mini NaNoWriMo. I know a lot of people usually try to do 50,000 words by the end of the month or something. Well, I'm not really keeping the end of the month goal really clear and in sight. I'm more looking at the day-to-day stuff, because I, like I mentioned, have a lot going on, so I can't really afford to be trying to do 50,000 words in a month, and especially not right now. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing on doing 100 words a day, and 100 words is a really small amount. So the first night of doing NaNoWriMo, I stopped to check how many words I had gone through already, and I had blown past the 100 and was sitting at 200 words. So since I was kind of in the groove, I decided to keep with it, and I wound up writing about 750 words that night, which that was pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. And so I'm going to try to keep with doing at least 100 words a day, because I know that some days are going to be busier and some will be lighter. Tuesdays and Fridays are the days right before big updates, because Wednesdays I usually post a YouTube video or something, not always, but I usually try to, and I also post updates of my comic Aces everywhere. And Friday is the day before I post the Heyday Kids now. It's also the day before posting my bigger, longer YouTube videos, which I usually put more editing into. So, as you can imagine, some days are going to be easier to write, and some days it's not really feasible to work in more than 100 words. But if I can get 100 words in here and there, and maybe a little bit more if I'm feeling it more some days, I will be way closer to finishing the book that I'm working on. And I'm really excited for this one just because it's shorter than what I'd like it to be, but I feel like it's a nice story. And it's not connected to my comics at all, which a lot of my books are, but this one is just its completely own thing. Now that's probably enough of me rambling about NaNoWriMo, so let's talk about the Heyday Kids bit. As I mentioned earlier, this is the third issue, and if you're not aware, the Heyday Kids is actually only going to be a mini-series. My comic Aces is going to be really long, probably anywhere from 50 issues to 100, 200. It really just matters on what it feels like as I'm writing it. if I want to abridge some parts or if I want to extend them. And I try to keep it flexible because I feel like sometimes I get caught up in the numbers and I sort of get sidetracked and I don't focus on the product as much as the numbers. I need to focus on making good comics, not how many issues of it it's gonna be. I need to focus on just telling the story I need to and want to. And so, Aces, that's gonna be a really long series. How long? I can't say for sure. But the Heyday Kids, I do have a more solid guesstimate at how many issues it's gonna be. Thus far, I've pretty much completely written out the whole series, issue by issue, and it's sitting at about 6 issues right now, but I feel like there are some points I need to flesh out more, so it's probably going to be about 7 or 8 issues long. And also a key difference between Aces and Heyday Kids is that with Aces I spend a lot more time on the art and story writing and stuff, whereas the Heyday Kids is really more of like a go with how I'm feeling at that moment. Like, some pages you'll look at them and there will be full backgrounds, and other ones you'll look at them and there's basically no backgrounds. What I did was that I was getting a lot of creative burnout while I was working on Aces, so I decided that I needed to do another project so that I was still working and keeping myself, you know, in practice, but something that was easier for me to do, quicker, and more fun. And that's not to say that Aces isn't fun, but it's got a lot of thinking involved in it, and something that I didn't expect was that a lot of the time, especially with the second issue, I had to stop to do a lot of just like deep introspection, and I wasn't expecting one of my own comics that I'm writing to really hit me that hard, but I went through some stuff when I was writing the second issue, man, and especially when I was drawing some of the parts, I just had to like step away and I just couldn't even work on the page for days on end. So that was kind of rough. But the Heyday Kids doesn't really require that deep of commitment and work, but it's still a really important part of the Godsent universe. So I need to make it, you know, presentable and actually work well. And I keep making this sound terrible. I keep making it sound like I just throw it together and I'm not putting any effort or love into this series, but I'm actually putting a lot into it because I'm having a lot of fun and I feel really free while I'm working on it. And I really like that. And I like being able to just sort of throw my thoughts and just spur the moment ideas at the page and see where that goes. And like that said, like I mentioned, I do have an end goal for it. And I'm really excited to get to that point because that means that I will have finished an entire series. And it's not really self-contained, like you can read it alone, but by the end, you're still gonna be wondering what next. And that's sort of the point. Because by the end of the series, the Heyday Kids still have a lot more to do. Because they've been planned to come into Aces, actually, for a lot longer than they've had their own series. I really decided that they needed their own series to tell their side of the story. Like, really give them motivators as to why they want what they want. And I do have a lot of like one-off graphic novels and stuff like that from Aces that'll go into the other characters, but there are so many moving parts and like facets of the Godsent universe that I just really have to elaborate and expand on them more. And so after the Heyday Kids, I'm probably going to be working on a different either mini-series or graphic novel that takes place inside the Godsent universe. And that could be anywhere from my wild steampunk west story, or it could be my 1940s noir cop story, or it could be one of the modern, up-to-date Aces stories that is sort of like a one-off with a character who may have already been in, or one who's going to come in. And so that's just really exciting to me, and it's weird because Aces really, like the story, ranges really far back into the past, but it's not stuff that really truly impacts the main comic itself. And so it's kind of interesting, because there's stories that I feel like I need to tell, but they're not in the same way that I feel like I need to tell Aces. Updates for the Heyday Kids are going to be a lot shorter this time around, just because I'm still actively working on Aces and a lot of other stuff and NaNoWriMo, like I mentioned, but weekly updates will be a thing. And I want to also do just a lot more with it this time, like visually, and I want to try and polish the visuals up a lot more. Hopefully shorter updates aren't much of a problem, because I feel like things have improved a lot visually, and it takes a lot of time and work to make things look good. So that said, if that gets to being just not sustainable, I will go back to doing more of what I was doing for the first and second issue. But I am better at drawing than when I started the series a year ago, so there's that. And I also wanted to briefly touch on that. It's that for the longest time, whenever I was trying to do my own creator-owned stuff and independent stuff, it took me like a year to make one issue. And I didn't share a lot of that stuff, but it was just so grueling to work on it because I was really down on myself. And looking back at old posts that I made when I was working on the first issue of, like, the revamped final version of the first issue of Aces, I said some really horrible things about myself and my own work. And now my mindset, like, whenever I think of my own comics, my mindset is I need to be my own biggest fan. Because if you don't like your own work, why should anyone else? That's how I feel it should be. Like, if you're gonna just talk trash about your own stuff all the time, why would someone want to read it if they know that the author doesn't even like it? And so it's really important that you're positive about your stuff. And even if you look at it and there's flaws and mistakes, you need to just come to terms with the fact that you made that. And you as a flawed human can never make something that's perfect, but you can try and do as close to that as you can. But you always need to keep in mind that you made that. And I just really struggled with that a lot for like the first couple years really of making comics. And I mean, I've been making comics for a long time, but like when I was really getting serious about it. And over the last year, I've come really far because I finished the last issue of Aces last year, and right after that I started on the first issue of the Heyday Kids, just right out of the gate, and I finished that early this year, and then immediately after finishing that, I started on the second issue of the Heyday Kids, and I went through some rough stuff with that one just because I had whooping cough while I was trying to finish it. But I did finish it. And after I did that, I started work on the second issue of Aces, which I then completed in its entirety just shortly. So it's not been long since I finished that one, but as soon as I was done working on that one, I threw myself into working on the third issue of the Heyday Kids. And having produced like 4-ish issues of comics by myself in the last year's time, that's a pretty awesome feeling. Because a lot of people, they look at how long it takes to do something by themselves, and so they kind of get down thinking about that, and it just gets to a point where they don't want to do it because it's so time consuming and you're doing it all by yourself. And I was in that boat too for a long while, but now I see that if I don't work on it, why should anyone else want to work on it? And I feel like maybe someday I'll be able to hire help or something, but for now, I'm just working on my own stuff and getting it done by myself, because I can see that if I really sit and I put the pedal to the metal and I work, I can get a lot done in 1 year. And that's really important, is that I'm actually getting stuff done. For the longest time, I was trying to do Aces over and over and over again, and I remade that first issue so many times. But now I'm done redoing what I've already done. And I would really encourage you, if you're working on your own comic or something like that, that you would just stop redoing it or spinning your wheels or whatever. Just start. And a lot of people will tell you, don't jump into your first major project or something like that. And that is true, that sometimes it's a really bad idea to start with a huge project at first. But if that's really what you want to do, don't sit there trying to just make the comics and then remake them, basically. You need to try either to make a shorter series and just get started, because the best way to get better at making comics is to make comics. And I learned so much through making Aces over and over again, but I would have gone so much farther if I had just actually kept going. And you're going to learn so much just by making your comic that you will, after probably a year, you'll look back and you'll be like, ooh, I really want to redo that first issue. But I would encourage you to wait. First issue, first chapter, whatever format you're making it in. But I would encourage you to just wait a while and just keep moving forward with the story. And then maybe once you're like 2 years or a year and a half or something further from the beginning, you can go back and remake that. But once you remake that first issue, you need to make sure that that is the final version, because you cannot keep reworking something. And I'm actually planning on redoing the first issue of the Heyday Kids eventually, but you know when I'm doing that? I'm gonna redo it after I've finished the rest of the series. And I'm planning on making like a full series omnibus that I will print after I finish the whole series, and I will remake the first issue so that the first one in the omnibus looks really nice and crisp and stuff. But until I finish the series, I am not allowing myself to redo that first issue, no matter how mad it makes me when I look back at it, like, why did I do some of that stuff? And I would encourage you to do sort of the same. Just keep moving forward until you've come really far and you truly know what you want to fix. Because that can be a motivator, looking back and seeing how far you've come. And this just turned into a giant, like, inspirational rant, kind of. But I hope that you gained something from it and that it kind of helped you gain more motivation to work on your own stuff. And I hope that it just makes you work. And I hope that you move forward with your dream project, story, whatever you might be working on. That's it for now. And hopefully you will enjoy checking out the third issue of the Heyday Kids. It's available to read for free on Tapaz, Webtoons, and Godson Comics. I'll include links to everywhere you can read it below, and it'll be updating every Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. God bless!